Hey there, welcome to the Quiz 5.04 review on frequency distributions and box and whisker plots. We're going to go ahead and move through those 5 questions that are similar to the 5 questions on your quiz. Oops. All right, so for question number 1, it says the histogram shows the heights in inches of members of a professional basketball team, and we want to know what percent was less than 76 inches or greater than 81 inches. So if you remember, just changing my pen color here for a second. To find the percentage, we take part that we want to know about over the total, and we multiply by 100. So in this case, we want to know what percent was less than 76. So here's 76, and I want to figure out, okay, so how many basketball players account for those that were less than 76 inches? Well, this first class, I only have one basketball player from 70 to 72 inches, and I have 4 players from 75 or 73 to 75. Okay, so that part makes 5. Okay, but I also am looking for who's greater than 81 inches. So here's my 81 cutoff. So I want to know who's greater than 81, and that's going to be these 2 people that are represented in that class. So 5 plus 2 is going to represent all those that were less than 76 and then greater than 81. Now remember we put that over the total. So if we want the total, we're going to add up all of these parts. So 1 plus 4 plus 1 plus 8 plus 2. Okay, so the part over the whole. So I've got 7 in my numerator, and then if I add up my denominator, we end up with 16. Okay, so 7 divided by 16, and then I multiply that by 100, and I end up with 43.75%. Okay, so that's the percent that is less than 76 inches or greater than 81 inches. Okay, so moving on to question number 2, it says which histogram represents the data. So notice we have this set of data right here, and then we have 4 histograms that we're trying to match to. All right, so if we look at this first one, A, I'm just going to kind of use process of elimination here. So from 0 to 5, it's saying we have no meal options. So if I go through this list, you can see we don't have any from 0 to 5, so that would be okay. But then we've got 5 to 10. Oh, look at this. Just looking at this now that I'm actually looking at the histogram, notice it goes from 0 to 5 and then 5 to 10. Well, we don't want to repeat these numbers. Remember, the classes need to be a continuation. So actually, we're just going to go ahead and eliminate choice A right there because our bottom axis here isn't labeled correctly. Okay. So let's look here at this second choice. So I've got 6 to 8. So we've got 6, 7, 8, that's 3. 9, 10, 11 is 3, 12, 13, 14 is 3, 15, 16, 17 would be 3. So this one, the classes look okay in terms of the breakdown. So let's look to see if they totaled things correctly. So from 6 to 8, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that checks out. Then from 9 to 11, I'm just seeing 1, so that checks out. And then 12 to 14, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3 14s, so that would check out. And then 15 to 17, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that looks fantastic as well. So, looks like B would be our correct answer because the classes were all had a range of 3 and my frequency in each class was correct. So choice B. Okay, so moving on to question number 3. It says which box and whisker plot is going to represent the data set. All right, so whenever we have a box and whisker and we're trying to match it, I think one of the best ways to do this, I'm going to go ahead and get out of full screen here for a second. And we're going to go ahead and bring up our calculator, and I'm going to insert our data into our 5-number summary, okay? So there we go. I can clear these guys when I hit this twice. All right, so I'm going to go back to data. We're going to go into L1. I'm going to type in my data set. So 24, 35, 50, 42, 53, 14, 12, 30, and 40. Okay, so if I go back and just double check, remember we tell you to check 40, 30, 12, 14, 53, 42, 50, 35, and 24. All right, so that looks good. So then I'm going to go ahead and hit second, and then that data button again gets me to the stats. We're going to go to number 1, one variable statistics. We're looking at the first list, L1. Press enter all the way through, and then here we're going to get our 5-number summary. So we're going to go ahead and scroll down until we see that minimum value listed. So there is my min and my quartiles are showing up, okay? So I'm going to move this to the side so I can do both of these things at once. Or maybe not. Okay, I'm going to write, sorry about this, guys. We'll write this down. So I've got 12, 19, 35 for my median. When I keep scrolling down, I get 46 and 53. All right, so okay, so there's my 5-number summary. Okay, so remember that your min and your max, those are going to be your starting and your stopping. Those are your whiskers. Okay, so 12, now here's if I look at my range, I'm going from 10 to 20, these are going by 2. So this is 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Okay, so that's how that all works there. So I'm starting at 12. So all of these start at 12. And I'm ending at 53. So we've got 52, 53 is right in the middle, and it's the same for all of those. Okay, so min and max, they don't help us. Now the first quartile, that's going to be where your box starts. Okay, this was min, this is max. The first quartile should be at 19. Well, this first one here is past 20, so option A can't be right. Okay, option B, this looks good. Okay, that would be my first quartile, and same with option C, that's my first quartile, those are both 19, but option D, notice it's past 20, so that can't be right. Okay, then I go and I look for my median. Well, my median needs to be 35, so right here, 32, 34, right in the middle, that looks to be my median, where this guy, the median was right at 30, and that is not the median for my set of data. So option C is eliminated, which means that option B would be my match. Okay, now really quick, if you are someone without a graphing calculator, remember that you're going to have to go through and do this by hand. So we would first need to, those of you who had the calculator, you can go ahead and fast forward to question number 4. But if you need to see this by hand, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to list these in order from smallest to largest. So 12, 14, then it looks like we got 24, and 30, 35, 40, 42, 50, and 53. Okay, so that takes care of my data. So we start by finding, we have our min and our max. Okay, those are easy to identify because that's our front and our end. And then we're going to go ahead and find the median of that data set. So in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have an odd number, so it's going to be that actual middle number. That middle number, I'm going to change my pen colors just to kind of distinguish, is going to be that 35. Okay, so this is my median. Okay, now remember we need to go then and look at our first half of the data. And now we need to find the median of this set of data. So I've got an even number of numbers, so it's going to be these two in between. So I have to find the average, 14 plus 24 divided by 2. So that quartile, that first quartile, is going to equal 19. And then if I do the same thing for these last four, I'm looking at these two right here. I've got to find the average of 42 and 50. So 42 plus 50 divided by 2, that's going to be my third quartile. And that gives me, oops, I didn't divide by 2. That's going to give me 46. Okay, and you can see we got the same numbers. This was my minimum. This was my first quartile. 35 was my median. 46 was my third quartile, and 53 was my maximum. Okay, so I was able to get those values by doing it by hand instead of the calculator. I just wanted to show that to you for those of you who needed to see that by hand. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to question number 4. So here it says the number of hours that year 8 students did on homework in 1 week was recorded down in the frequency table below. So create a dot plot for the data in the table and hover. So in the OHS, they're already going to have a dot plot graph for you, and they're going to be labeled. So they're going to have the hours of homework. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. Okay. So when you create your dot plot, you're going to hover over each number. So you're going to hover over the 1 on the number line, and then you're going to click and drag up to create the dots. So since the hours of homework here is 1, the frequency is 3. You're going to click and hover until you pull up to 3. Okay, so if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so this is going to draw in 3 dots because we're drawing a dot plot. Okay, so for 2, there's 4, so you're going to hover over and drag up until you get 4 dots. For 3 hours of homework, there were 7 students. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Same for 4. There's 7. For 5, there's 5. 6, there's only 3. And then 7, there's 2. Okay, so in the OHS, you're going to hover over the number. So you'll hover over the number 1 and you'll click up or drag up until you get 3 dots. And then you'll just continue each using the frequencies for each category. Okay. All right, so that takes care of question number 4. You can pause and complete that. And we're going to move on to question number 5. So here it says, suppose 170 algebra students took the EOC exam that is worth 120 points. Okay, so it's out of 120. That is our total. The 5-number summary for the scores is shown here. So we've got a minimum value of 35, first quartile is 68, median's 84, the third quartile is 101, and then the max value was 118. So this is basically the bottom student and the top student. So how many students had a score of 90 or less? Okay, this isn't asking for a percentage, it's asking for the total number of students that had 90 or less. Okay, I just realized I didn't change the question because it didn't work for the 5-number summary when I was doing this. So I just changed that really quick. So this should actually say about how many students had a score of 101 or less, because I need to use data from the 5-number summary. Otherwise, the 5-number summary doesn't matter. Okay, so out of 120 points, this is how people scored. Now on the EOC, there were 170 students that took the EOC. And we want to know how many of them had a score of 101 or less. Well, if we look at 101, what does 101 match up with? Well, it matches up with the third quartile. And the third quartile tells us that 75% of our data is going to be represented up to that point. Okay, so if I take my total number of students, so total students, okay, and that's that 170, and I multiply it by my percentile, so in this case the 75th, this is going to tell me how many students had a score of 101 or less. So 170 times 75% is 127.5. Okay. Now remember, when you're typing in a percent into your calculator, you're actually going to type it in as a decimal, which would be 0.75. Okay, so just a little refresher on that for you. All right, so I didn't check my numbers. I just made up my 5-number summary before when I was making this question to match. You're not going to get a decimal in your multiple choice answers. I just went and checked. On the quiz, you'll get a whole number, but for our sake, for this example, we got a decimal. You can't have part of a student anyways, so we probably would just say 127. But just so you know, when you're actually doing question number 5 on the quiz, you're gonna get a whole number. You will not get a decimal when you get your final answer. Okay, so all you do, take your total number of students and you multiply it by whatever quartile this value is. So if, let's say it said 84, I'd use 50%. If it said 68, I'd use 25%. Okay, so let me write this right here. This is 50%, and then quartile 3 is 75%. All right, that wraps up our quiz review for section 5.04. Hope this helps. We'll see you next time.